Welcome! My name is Kelly Anderson, and this is Fanimated, the animation fan podcast where we get a chance to geek out about our favorite animated media. Today, Jamie Krause is joining me to discuss Dreamwork's 2014 computer animated film, How to Train Your Dragon 2. From new characters and settings to wild new developments in Hiccup's family life, the second installment in our favorite dragon franchise has a lot to offer casual and diehard fans alike. So spoiler warning as we dive in, and let's get started and let's get animated. All right, are you ready to talk about How to Train Your Dragon 2?
I'm so ready.
So ready. Well, I wanted to do this episode now because March is the best month, as you know, Jamie, because happy birthday.
Yeah.
We get your birthday, we get my birthday, and we get How to Train Your Dragon's birthday. Woo!
Oh, it's the best.
The best. And this year is especially special because How to Train Your Dragon turns 10 already.
Oh, shoot. Has it really?
Yeah, that makes me feel super old, but there you go.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought about it.
I know, just bonkers. So I was like, well, we got to talk about How to Train Your Dragon 2 because we haven't talked about it yet, and we talked about How to Train Your Dragon already, so check out that episode if you haven't listened to that. In that episode, I had Josh Palmer on the podcast, and we talked about that. Since we didn't get a recording of you about How to Train Your Dragon, the first one, like,
right.
Really briefly, like, what is your history with How to Train Your Dragon?
Yeah, my mind is still reeling from you saying it was 10 years ago. I don't, because, like, I've seen it a few times, but not super recently have I watched the first one. So what I remember most is probably that first flying scene. I definitely remember everything about Toothless being such a bizarre, adorable, terrifying character. And then there's one other random little thing that I remember super strongly, and that is a scene where Hiccup's father is talking to him, and I think he must be reprimanding him for all of the stuff that goes down. For like, oh, you were supposed to kill this dragon and you didn't do it. You can't be the leader we need you to be, such and such, and all this other stuff. And then he like storms out of the room, right? And it's this big emotional moment.
Yeah.
And there's a bit where he steps outside of the room, so now Hiccup can't see him anymore. And you just get like a 3-second long shot of him like stopping and like looking up, and there's tears in his eyes. And then he just like takes a deep breath and keeps walking. And I just remember watching that and thinking, like in that single moment, they just gave him so much more depth and and emotion in this character that he wouldn't have had otherwise.
Yes.
And all they had to do was have him like stop for a second, and it was just so good. Like I remember thinking, this is far and beyond what I could have expected from any movie. Like, let alone a movie with, like, a cutesy cartoon dragon. Like, I was not expecting this, you know?
Yes. That's so great. That is such a good moment, and I absolutely love it. Yeah. All of How to Train Your Dragon is like that, though. They just, like, bring out all the feels. All of the emotions you could feel are present in these films. So, How to Train Your Dragon 2, we saw that together, didn't we? It was a group of us.
I know we saw the third one as a big group. I don't know.
What I'm pretty sure, at least I went with a group, a college group, so maybe you were in that group, maybe it wasn't.
Yeah,
but
it sure might have been.
It was awesome. Regardless, I'm going to even rewind back to before I saw it for the first time. So, it's no surprise that when I say I love How to Train Your Dragon, I think most people who listen to this podcast, and especially people who know me personally, know that How to Train Your Dragon is my favorite movie of all time.
Of course.
So I was following this movie so closely because I was so excited for it to come out. And I remember the day that this teaser trailer dropped into our laps. It was like the summer before. Yeah. And I woke up and I saw that and I like flipped my lid because that first teaser trailer was basically like that first flying scene with Toothless and Hiccup. And they're like racing through the clouds, and like Hiccup's got his helmet on, and you're like, oh, he's older, but you don't know. And then at the very end of that really, really beautiful shot, and they have Hiccup take off his helmet, and it's like, what?
Oh, yeah.
Hiccup's cute now. What?
Yeah.
The internet, well, at least the internet I inhabited, exploded.
Oh no, I remember that. I remember the internet having a certain reaction to that. That was pretty wild.
It's so wild. Oh, man. And I remember I ran, because I was on campus that summer, and I ran straight to the seminary library, and I had to show, before I went to work, I went straight to Libby Brown.
Oh, perfect.
And I showed it to her because she was the only person on campus that would understand my insane obsession. Anyway, so I just remember that very vividly. And
oh, absolutely.
I was so pumped for this movie. And when I finally saw it in theaters, it did not disappoint.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, let's start at the very beginning. A very good place to start.
All right, sounds like a plan.
Well, first off, like, it's, of course, I love the openings and endings of these films. The, like, this is Burke, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, little speech.
And what's fun about this film is, like, because there's such a time difference between the first and the second, both, like, in real time, and also they fast-forwarded in the timeline in the story.
Right.
Is like, I mean, I'd just like to go over some of like the changes that they made, because obviously there are a ton of changes that happen to both the characters and to the setting, like to Burke in general. And like those were such fun things to encounter as a huge fan, you know?
Yeah, for sure. I think the biggest thing is Hiccup himself, but when I say that, I don't mean like literally him looking different. I mean what he has, I mean, I guess invented is really the best word for it.
Yes.
In terms of like things that we knew about in the first movie, and it makes so much sense that a character who is like inquisitive and like super intrigued to learn more about dragons and more about the world around him, it makes perfect sense that that character would take some of these elements and build upon them and expand upon them. And then suddenly we get to the second movie and he's almost invented like a brand new technology. It's so cool to see the the little additions to Toothless's I can't speak, Toothless's whole riding setup, like the saddle and the little thing for his tail. But then, I mean, like you were talking about that opening scene, but then when you've just gotten through this whole awesome flying scene, and it's so cool and impressive and inspiring, and there's the music and everything, and then Hiccup says like, all right, let's give it another try. And you're like, okay, what's he talking about? And then he falls off the dragon. And then he has like a wingsuit. He can fly himself. And like,
yes,
you see that and you immediately think, okay, that makes sense. Because a person who has lived in this world and loves dragons and loves like trying to create things and even designed his own like missing leg, that person would figure out a way to create a suit capable of flight. Like, that is such a fun idea. And that yes. translates over to all the crazy, like, I mean, the sword might be my favorite
yes.
part of the entire movie.
It's
the
so
sword
cool.
is the coolest thing. And I didn't even catch this the first time, but there's a scene while he's like, while he's talking to certain characters that we'll get into later, I'm sure. But while he's talking to these characters, he's waving around the sword and he's explaining, like, that it has something to do with like this gas, and then when a spark activates it, the whole thing ignites. So that's the reasoning for why the sword looks cool. But then he says, when dragons see you as one of their own, they're more likely to trust you. And I didn't catch that the first time. He literally he built a flaming sword, not just because it looked cool, but because that's a way to become closer with dragons and have them trust him. Like, that is such a perfect thing for him to do. That's such a perfect idea to give him, like, from a writing perspective. That I just didn't catch that. I must have been looking away during that line or something.
Well, Hiccup is more of a pacifist, and so he wouldn't, build weapons like to, he isn't that kind of person. So it just, you're right. It just totally makes sense that, of course, it's to increase his like relationships with dragons that he builds these tools. It's so cool.
It's like everything that he works towards is not just to do something that's fun or do something that's like cool, and not even just something that will be important to lead people. It's also based around dragons, which makes perfect sense in a world where dragons are a thing. Like that I don't know, something about that just felt so perfectly, I don't know, that I just really appreciated that. That was cool.
Yes, I love all of the gadgets that he invents, all of the other things around the village that he invents, and like the changes he makes to his peg leg are super cool. Yeah, and like with the suit and with the sword and all those things, like an added benefit of watching like the Dragon Rider series is you kind of get to see him slowly like develop all of these things that eventually end up in the second movie.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Yeah. There are like two different dragon shows, and one is like when they're still like 16, and it's still after the first film, but it's more like on Burke and stuff like that. There's a second one that's on Netflix, and they are closer to the second film in that one, so they are older but not quite the same designs. And that one is more like they're exploring more and like seeing other tribes and clans and stuff, and like on their own a little bit. And so, I mean, that series is so fun.
I have heard of these series, but I never got around to them. And I was a little confused on which one was which, because it seemed like there were a bunch of different little subtitles, and I was like, is this like a special? Is this an entire show? And unfortunately, I never took the time to check them out more, but I've heard they're fantastic, so...
Yeah, if you're a Dragons fan, you'll definitely really enjoy them. If you're not like super into it, like it's not the best show ever, you know what I mean? It's not the best writing necessarily. But what they do is like there's several benefits to watching it. One is just you get to see relationships develop more, like both with like Hiccup and Astrid and Hiccup and his father especially, which is really cool when you like lead up into the second film. And obviously Hiccup and Toothless. And then you also just get to experience more screen time with the rest of the gang, which is really fun because they really do have their own personalities and desires, and like they have their own like arcs, and they all develop in really cool ways.
Right.
So definitely check those out if you are a fan of dragons, because they're awesome. And it's super, super cool.
I always kind of felt a little bad for the other characters in their group because, I guess Hiccup's name is kind of goofy too, but Astrid gets a normal name. Everyone else gets the silliest names. And, like, when they have to say these characters' names in, like, really dramatic situations, it makes it a little bit goofy. Because they'll be in a battle or something, and then somebody will be like, oh no, we have to save fish legs. And it just takes you out of the moment a little bit, just a little bit.
Jamie, I think I'm so ingrained and like so drenched with this story that it doesn't faze me at all.
Oh, awesome. Okay. That's actually super cool, not gonna lie.
It's even funnier in the series. Then they have some added characters that are also awesome that don't show up in the movies. And like one of them, one of them is named like Heather, like super normal name.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. It's crazy. Anyway, moving on. So yeah, so you have all those fun things that he's invented, and of course everyone has like different character designs. Everyone's like grown up a little bit, and Hiccup has braids in his hair, which are just the cutest things. And
yeah. While we were talking about how much things have changed since the first movie,
yeah,
I mean, this is going to sound super obvious. They bring it up in the movie all the time, but everyone's attitudes towards dragons have totally changed. And that's super fun to watch, because whereas in the first movie, there was all this fear, there was all this like suspicion, like, oh, if we see a dragon, we're either terrified or we're going to go hunt it down. And then towards the end of the movie, things are a lot more amicable. In this movie, from the beginning, they're free to explore all of the weird and like fun, goofy interactions that people can have with dragons. Like, the very opening scene is everybody competing in a dragon race where they have to like catch sheep and throw them into a hoop. And it is amazing. It's so funny to watch. And I wrote down specifically, there's a moment where Astrid jumps off of her dragon onto a different dragon, grabs the sheep, jumps off of that dragon, and back onto her first dragon. And it is the coolest thing I've ever seen. And that's only in like the first 4 minutes of the movie. It only gets more bonkers from there. Yeah, it's super impressive.
It's super awesome. And I think I take that for granted sometimes, because like of all of the How to Train Your Dragon content that is out there, most of it involves, you know, the Vikings are friends with dragons and everyone has their own dragon. And it's just the first film, really, that, you know, it's like they're enemies. So I'm just so used to the concept of, oh, yeah, of course they're friends. But it is a big thing. And you get to see like all these different Vikings in the village, like with their dragons. And I really love the elder lady and like all of her little
all the tiny dragons,
terrible terrors. I love that so much.
I think there's a line even like about at the halfway point of the movie where Hiccup is talking to, well, he's talking to someone, and he describes to them like, it's amazing how much things have changed. The forges that we used to use to make like weapons for attacking dragons, now they're like, we make saddles. And we have little washing stations so we can wash the dragons and, like, get them their food. And it sounds so impossibly domestic and, like, cute. And you see that at other points in the movie. It's just this wonderful little place. And that makes it all the more, like, tense and worrying when, you know, stuff goes down later on.
For sure. So, we've already kind of talked about the dragon racing, which is super fun. And then, of course, it cuts to Hiccup and Toothless and their awesome flying scene that was in the trailer. Absolutely beautiful. And, like, one of the best scenes. I just, like, it makes me wish I could, like, fly. Okay? I just, like, man.
No,
it's so
absolutely.
Cool.
The only thing I have written down in my notes is, this feels like magic. And, like, that's not super helpful for an in-depth analysis of a movie, but it is what I was thinking at the time, so that's what we're going to go with, I guess.
The animation is so good, and it's just so beautiful. And just, I mean, that's the same with the first one, too. It's like the flying scenes, like test drive and romantic flight in the first one, like, I was like, man, it's just like the clouds and the sky and the like, just, it's so good. And this first scene kind of like introduces all of those things. It's like this crazy, they're doing all these crazy things, and it's also just beautiful and surreal and fantastic. And of course, like you said, they reveal his flying suit, and it's crazy. And of course, Toothless has to save him again.
Yep.
So, of course, Hiccup is, like, trying to map out the world and explore and do all these things. And, Yeah, and I really, really love that. And I love that, like, idea that, you know, he has landed at other places that are inhabited and people, like, scream and run away because it's a night fury, you know?
Yeah.
And
no it's a little sad, but it's also kind of funny.
It's hilarious. I think it's hilarious.
Like the fact that he just got used to it and he's just like, yep, there's another one.
Yes. And of course Hiccup's, not gonna do anything threatening, but it's just
funny.
Of
course.
Because and throughout, the whole trilogy really, it's like Burke really is one of a kind in their, acceptance of the dragons to the rest of the world. So, it's just another kind of reminder of that. But I really, really love that scene with Astrid and Hiccup, and like laying out kind of honestly the struggles that Hiccup goes throughout the film.
Absolutely.
And it's also just a really cool, natural way to kind of show the audience like how far their relationship has gone and how at ease they are with each other since, so much time has passed, which is, they just do it so well of like integrating those two things and making everything very natural.
Right. They don't have to literally like spell it out because it's obvious just from the way they're talking to each other.
Exactly. Yeah. And I always love that scene, too, because Toothless and Stormfly are, like, playing in the background. And
totally,
so
yeah.
you just see them rolling around. It's so great.
Right. Kelly, I need to be honest about, like, this scene. They are so funny, and they're so cute. Like, I couldn't believe how clever this was. Like, this time while I was watching it, I noticed that, like, she lands on the little outcropping. She gets off her dragon, and she starts. What she's literally talking to him is like, "Hey, where were you? What's going on?" Like, and he starts telling her like about how his day was going. While they're saying those things, he just casually like hands her the drawing stuff, like the little charcoal stick, and she just starts sketching out what they're looking at in front of them. They don't even have to. They don't even have to say, "Oh, here you go. Oh, cool. I'm going to start drawing." They're talking about something totally unrelated, and they're just so, like, comfortable with each other that they just kind of do that anyway. And that was so fun to watch because they're, like, the closest that two people can be, and they're also just huge dorks, and they, like, start making fun of each other and stuff. And at one point, Hiccup is impersonating his dad, so to fill out the other end of the conversation, Astrid is impersonating him. It is the best because every time she says anything, she's just like, "Gee, okay, Dad, I'm gonna go spend the rest of my day goofing off and run around with dragons." And he's just like, "I don't do that with my shoulders. What are you doing?" It's so dumb, but it's so funny and it's so heartwarming.
The animators really did a great job with their acting on that one. So fun.
Yeah.
And of course, the big like internal struggle Hiccup goes throughout this film is the fact that Stoic wants Hiccup to take on the role of chief, and Hiccup is not ready for that, not ready for responsibility. And I just want to dive into like, again, one of the reasons I love these films so much is that I feel like every single time Hiccup was going through something, I was like going through the same thing in real life. Like the first one, he's just like really unsure of like himself and his world and like where he fits into it. And, just that awkward teenage life of like, how do I fit in? And maybe I don't. And then again, in the second one, I was like, oh my goodness, like, I'm going into, like, being an adult soon, and, like, I'm going to have to, like, take on so much more responsibility, and I'm not ready for that either. And then here's Hiccup, struggling with those same realities.
Yep.
And the same can be said for the third one, too. Like, having to say, like, we'll get into that when I talk about the third one eventually, but like
right.
saying goodbye to people, like 2019 I had to say goodbye to all of you guys, but not as not as finalized as.
Was that just last year?
It was just last year.
Wow.
Yeah,
that is weird to think about. For some reason that feels like longer ago, but the first one feels more recent. And reality is the opposite, like such a long gap of time. Wow.
Yes.
Anyway, I'm sorry. Yeah. Nope, I'm not sorry.
You're not sorry. You can't say sorry on this podcast. First rule. You can't apologize.
Yep.
So, so the second one and those themes of him and him, like Hiccup also talks about like, oh, I've never met my mother, I don't really know who I am. Like I feel like it's because he doesn't know who he is that he can't take the responsibility, because in his mind, like, he isn't his father, but he has to accept who he is and like instead of trying to fill the shoes of Stoic, he needs to like bring himself into the role of chief, like he just isn't ready to see that and do that. And so the film is also, because between all these different voices coming at him and trying to tell him who he is, he just isn't sure. But ultimately he follows his own, just like he always does,
Yeah, and I thought the way his decision in that regard moves forward is so cool, because like when they first introduced that, and it's like he kind of lays it out when he's talking to Astrid. He's like, so my dad obviously wants me to step up and become the chief, and obviously I want to do that, but also I'm so conflicted about like about if that's exactly who I am, like you said. And I kind of felt like it would have been easy to take that in the direction of like, my dad wanted this thing, but instead I'm going to follow my heart and do this thing. And that's not really what ends up happening, It's more complicated than that.
Right.
I just really appreciated how, even though, like, his father's expectations for him are set up there, but by the end of the movie, he hasn't thrown those away. He also hasn't fully become the same person. He's done like a third option that's sort of a combination of a couple of things and sort of his own path, and you can't really just condense it down into a couple words, like it's the movie itself is showing what he's learned. And I just think that's so cool, because they didn't make it simple, and I really appreciate that.
And they never do. I love the dragon movies too, because they make things more complex, and I love it.
Yeah.
So we could go scene by scene through this movie, and I totally would, but then we'd be here all day. So let's just jump into the additional characters for this film, because there are a handful. Oh, so, starting out, we have our antagonists, which are the big bad Drago Bloodfist.
Right.
Very scary. He wants to take over the world with his dragon army.
Army of Dragons, yes.
He has a similar backstory to Hiccup, honestly, except instead of like befriending dragons, he decides he's going to rule over all of them. And honestly, I'm throwing it out there, I don't think he's a very good villain.
Okay.
I think he's very one-dimensional and boring. And is mostly just like big and scary and talks, I think
I can get that.
And I am okay with that, because instead of giving him more screen time and more time to develop as a villain character, they were more focused on the other external struggles of this film, and I'm okay with giving the Haddock family more time and ignoring the villain. So that's my thought on Drago.
I mean, the one thing I do like about him is the thing you've already pointed out, and that in some ways his like growing up and coming into this role is actually kind of similar to Hiccup. There's one scene in particular I really liked where he is, I think this is long after, like, I don't know, man, there's so many different scenes where people get captured, so I don't know where in the movie this happens. Everyone's always getting captured. But there's a point where he is staring down this dragon, and it's growling at him, and he, like, basically just starts screaming in response, like, basically in this big, like, show of bravado, like, I'm not going to be intimidated by you. And at one point, he actually reaches out, like, towards its head, and it looks eerily kind of similar to the thing that Hiccup does when he's trying to befriend someone, right? And it's very, like, obviously it's completely different because this is 100% based on, like, fear and competing to be quote unquote the alpha, but in some ways it looks similar. And that's so interesting because it makes you kind of think like these are two different ways the character of that young boy could have gone, you know? Because like one of them lost, well, I mean, they both lost a lot when they were young, but they ended up becoming two such totally different people, you know? And at one point when they're talking later on in the movie, I think Hiccup even says like, "Oh no, you don't understand. Like dragons are good and dragons are kind." I think he says dragons bring people together, and Drago. I don't know.
Drago.
One of something. I can never nail down the pronunciation. And in response to that, he just takes off his fake arm, and he's like, "Yeah, sure, dragons bring people together," and that is so interesting because Hiccup himself has like such a similar wound, a similar like missing body part because of a fight with a dragon, you know? Like in that way, even in a physical sense, they're actually kind of alike, but Hiccup would never dream of taking that injury and saying, "This is the dragon's fault, I'm gonna get revenge." Like he would never think that way, you know? Even though something so similar happened to both of them.
Yeah, I have nothing else to add. That sums it up perfectly. And I never thought about the symbolism with like Hiccup's hand thing with the dragons and Drago's that like visual symbolism that they used. But that's really cool.
It just feels so wrong when he does that because like you see the hand gesture and you think like that's meant for kindness, and that's meant for like two, like a human and a dragon finally trusting each other. That's not meant for this, and this feels so wrong, you know? And I think that's why I hated him so much, is because it just felt like a lot of the things we had seen in this first movie and a half, and he was taking those and like twisting them into something that was much more uncomfortable, and I'm just like, I don't want to see this anymore. I want a hero to come defeat you. That's what I want right now. So it was really satisfying to have this story play out in a way where even though there's loss and there's sacrifices, the heroes still win, obviously. And I know that's a very obvious thing to say. I'm just saying I was really happy about it because it made me happy.
Good. So moving on to our semi-antagonist, Eret, son of Eret.
Oh, yeah!
Absolutely phenomenal character.
I got to the end of the movie, and I was watching the credits. He is voiced by Jon Snow from Game of Thrones.
That is true. Kit Harington. Yeah. That is him.
Who would have
thought? Just, more dragons.
Yeah, of course. He's always He's always like a black-haired buff dude who fights dragons in the snowy mountains, everywhere, all the time. It's fine.
All the time. That's his very, very specific typecast. I really love that they do have Eret. Since Drago doesn't change at all, it's nice to have Eret to look at and see his change.
Yeah.
And it's just very cute that he bonds with Stormfly, and
that was nice.
That's just so sweet. I really love that scene when he climbs into the trap that she's in and is like, "Thank you for saving me," and he does the little hand thing too, the signature How to Train Your Dragon move, and I don't know, they're just so cute.
Absolutely, and it made it so clear that he's changed a little bit. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah, and he's starting to see differently, and so I think that's really cool. And then moving on, into the third one, continues to be a really cool character. So, I really like that addition.
Yeah, he's fun.
So, then we move on to perhaps the most important new character in this film. It's Valka.
It's Hiccup's mom!
Yay! Okay, I have so much to say about this.
Oh, yeah.
I don't even know where to start. So I'm going to let you start. I'm just going to hand it over. Ball's in your court.
Sure, yeah. The very first time we see her, I made sure to write this down. She is in this crazy outfit. She's got this warrior, kind of almost like a stereotypical like witch doctor, like the mask and the spikes and all this crazy armor, and it is so wild that you might not even notice, and I sure didn't notice the first time I saw this movie, she's not riding her dragon, she is standing on it. She's so self-assured and like confident and just ready to go and just has no fear at all about any dragon ever like even losing its balance, that she stands on them. That is the coolest idea. That is such a great little show of who her character is.
That scene is one of my favorite scenes in the whole trilogy. Just like it's a beautiful setting and in the clouds and Hiccup's frustrated, and then all of a sudden rising up from the clouds, it's this armored person, and it's just so weird. It's a dragon you've never seen before, and it's just like whoa, and I love that scene. And because Cloudjumper and her, they've had so much more time than Hiccup and Toothless to like become one with each other that I'm sure standing on Cloudjumper is no big deal for her.
Yeah, totally. It's really cool to see a character who has had years and years and years and years to get to know dragons like so deeply that when humans show up, she's awkward around them, and she's much more comfortable with the dragons. Like, that is super interesting to me.
It is.
Not even just outright in what she says, but even just kind of in how she acts, like, around Hiccup. She's super happy to finally see him, obviously, but she's a little reserved and, like, not sure what to say or what to do. But if she's around any dragons, she's immediately like, no, I'm at home. This is fine. Even meeting Toothless for the first time, she's just all smiles. She knows exactly what to like. I'm going to scratch him in the perfect spot that makes him happy, and like just goofy stuff like that. And there's never even a hint of being nervous, you know? And then she turns to Hiccup and she's just like, human interaction, family, what do I do? Like, she doesn't know, you know? And that was really fun.
She's far more comfortable with Toothless than her own son, that's for sure. An interesting tidbit about this is when the trailers, like the first full trailers came out, they did reveal that Hiccup's mother was in the movie.
Yep, I think I do remember that. Yeah.
That was a huge point of discussion at the time, I remember. And I could be quoting this wrong, but I'm pretty sure Dean DeBlois, the director, was like not about that and was pretty upset with the marketing that they revealed like this big thing that his mother is alive. Thankfully, the marketing team didn't reveal the other big surprise of this film.
Yeah. Yikes. That would have been a disaster.
Yikes. But I do remember that being kind of like a hot topic. And I'm kind of bummed because like I would have loved to see this film not knowing and then having that be revealed for the first time. Like, it would have been so much better, I think.
Oh, that would have been amazing. I definitely remember hearing that like specifically it was part of like a business decision of like, oh, we want more people to see this movie, so we're gonna acknowledge that there's another really famous voice, and like, oh, well, the character is a secret. Who cares? Just tell them that the character is gonna be there too.
Yeah.
So like, it was completely a business thing, which sucks so much because that
I know
it's so disappointing when there's a decision made like purely for the hope of making a few extra bucks and not at all thinking about the actual story. Like. That must have been heartbreaking for the people on the team who wanted to keep it a secret, you know? Because they knew how emotional that would have been.
They sacrificed that part of the story for, like, trying to get people in the theater. And it's just a big bummer. But, you know, Cate Blanchett is awesome as...
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Does a great job. Also, I'm going to be honest, I'm not a huge fan of her as a character. Like, Valka, it still unsettles me and kind of just eats away at me. And I know that Stoic and Hiccup forgive her.
Mm-hmm.
But I still I can't, as an audience member, forgive her for leaving her son for 20 years.
Oh, I gotcha. Okay.
Like, I don't care how noble your cause is. Like, he's your son.
I was sort of confused on what actually happened because we see the flashback and we see the dragon carrying her off. And then back in the present, she's like, I could have tried to come back, but I didn't. And for the life of me, I can't remember why. I think she says a reason.
I don't think she specifically is laying out exactly what happened, but I think as a combination of, well, one, she found like a home with the dragons. Like, she felt more comfortable there. Like, it's not like she had a super great life on Berk anyway.
Yeah.
Because she's trying to stop this, stop everyone from hurting the dragons. And what's different from her compared to Hiccup is that Hiccup is willing to confront those people and to change them. And Valka was like, oh, they cannot be changed. So I'm going to stay here where, like, my calling is, she's been going around saving dragons and, keeping them safe from Drago and other hunters. And she even says that she thought it would be safer if she didn't go back, like safer for them. So for whatever reason, she was feeling like, oh, she's going to fight this fight and not involve the people of Berk.
Right.
But I think it's also probably like a bit of fear of not wanting to go back to the place where, she, like her son, was like kind of ostracized in a way. And I can't forgive that. Like, and she even, she recognizes her faults and asks for forgiveness and she gets it, which is great. But I, like, as an audience member, I just can't forgive that. Especially we had so much, I had so much time to, like, soak in the first movie and to really, like, it's just so ingrained in me. And to think, like, wow, Hiccup went through his whole life feeling the way he felt and he didn't have his mom there. Like, and especially seeing who she is, like, I think it was more important for her to be with her son than for her to try to follow her selfish. I mean, I know it's not completely selfish, like she's helping the dragons, but like she was following her dreams and her goals and what made her comfortable instead of going back and doing the uncomfortable job of like being on Berk. And like, could you imagine Hiccup's life if he had Valka there to like help him? Because she, of all people, would have understood his point of view.
Yeah, I this is making me think of something else. I hadn't really thought about that perspective on it before, of her following what she wants to do versus her staying and doing the difficult thing of like trying to end the violence by, confronting these people. And that is making me think of okay, this is going to take a few steps. But so the first thing we talked about was like Stoic wants Hiccup to become the chief, protect the people, and Hiccup is seeing that as like one very difficult thing, and he doesn't know if he wants to do that or not yet, right? Later on in the movie, Valka says to him, like, this is going to be great. You can come with me. We will both live this life where we're protecting dragons, we're learning more about the world, we're learning all these secrets, and we're saving dragons and bringing them to the sanctuary. That's what I want for you. That's who you are. So now he's got two different people that he loves pulling him in these two different directions. And basically both of them saying, no, this is your destiny, this is who you are. And like later on in the movie, they do something really interesting where after certain events take place that I'm sure we'll talk about in a little bit, she tells him like, hey, who you are isn't just me or your father. Who you are is being the only person who can bridge these two worlds of the chief and like the people of Berk, and also this sanctuary of dragons and like this wild life that she lived, he is the one who can bring those two things together and move forward. And that was so interesting for me because I had not realized that's where they were going with that, you know?
Right.
And when you talked about how she wasn't able to stay behind and do the difficult thing of bringing an end to the violence, and instead she just went off and did her own thing, that kind of made me realize that is what Hiccup did, though. Like, he was actually able to stop the fighting. And that's super interesting now that I think about it, because that's kind of another way that he was bringing the two worlds together, you know? Like, he wasn't just...
Absolutely.
Like, he could have done either of the two extremes of his parents of, like, no, I have to protect the people if the dragons are getting hunted, you know, whatever, like back in the first movie. Or he could have taken the other extreme we see in this movie of, like, no, people can't change. It's better to just live separate and live with the dragons and kind of do our own thing. And instead, he brings these two groups together and he does the difficult... He finds a way to bring peace, you know? And that seems super obvious now that I say it out loud.
Well, here, let's make it even more confusing. Let's add more pieces to the puzzle. Are you ready?
Of course.
If you remember, in the first film, there is a point where Hiccup is going to run away.
Yep.
He gathers, like, his things, and he's like, okay, Toothless, we're leaving. Because he is about to have to kill a dragon, and he can't do it. And so he almost became just like Valka.
Weird.
And not coming back. But Astrid stops him. It's Astrid that keeps him, you know, from going.
I forgot about that.
And so, you know, that's another piece of like, well, Hiccup could have been just like Valka, but he had other people that were there to, you know, connect him, ground him to Burke. And Astrid is such an important role in all of these films, and she deserves more credit. So just wanted to throw that out there.
No, I think that's fair. I hadn't really thought about that at all, especially in comparison to the first movie.
So I am almost done talking about Valka. She's just such an important part of this film, and is one of the reasons why I can't put the second film as one of my favorites of the trilogy. It's like, and for some other reasons too, that it is my least favorite of the trilogy. Just throwing it out there. So obviously Valka, it bugs me that she left her son, and I would hope that mothers wouldn't do that, but you know, she did. And it just throws me off of it. And then the other thing about Valka, I think it hurts the first one, is because she is described as basically having the same ideas as Hiccup. And you go through the whole first film, and it's like, Hiccup was the first one to think of dragons as, you know, good, and like and the first one to be, you know, not wanting to be violent against the dragons. But then you learn about Valka, and it's like, oh, she was doing that, you know, 16 years before, you know? So, and I feel like it like discredits some of Hiccup's originality, you know, and of Hiccup's own, like, it was like this big thing. It's like Hiccup was the one to, you know, see more than just the war, just the violence. And then here you bring in this other character, and I feel like it undermines, you know, his story, because it's like, oh, actually someone else did it before him. Granted, just like we already talked about, he was the actual person who stood up and was like, you know, did the hard thing of trying to like bridge the gap. But Valka still had those ideas. So to me, especially like when I first watched the second film, it really just felt like they were taking that away from Hiccup. Like they were taking that thing of that was so different about him, and just like putting it into Valka. And you know what I mean?
Yeah. I hadn't really thought about it, but that's a good point.
And while we're here, I'll just get it out of the way because
Yeah.
the other thing I don't like about this film, or I guess not, it's not that I don't like it, it's just that other films in the series do it better, is
Yeah.
like the first one especially, the internal conflicts that Hiccup is struggling with and the external conflicts that he's struggling with are just so integrated and they're aligned so well and they correlate so well. I feel like the internal and external struggles in the second film are not well integrated.
I think I got you.
I feel like it's very jarring and a little it just flip-flops so much between, oh, this dragon army, and oh, family problems, and oh, who am I? And, you know, it just doesn't feel like as cohesive as, like, the first one where everything just breathed into the next thing. And this one feels very choppy. And, I mean, I don't know. So that's the other thing that makes this film my least favorite of the trilogy. But those are just my thoughts. Do you happen to have like a favorite of the trilogy at all?
I definitely cried more at the third one, and that's usually a pretty good barometer for like, because I come out of like every movie thinking that was really great and I loved it a lot. So I need to like, I need to think a little bit more of like, okay, now hold on though, which ones were actually really good? Because clearly I'm not a good enough critic of which ones are better. So sometimes I use random stuff like, how much did I cry? But the third one in particular was just astonishing to me. And maybe it's because I was a little bit older, so I was able to like think about what was going on a little bit more. I really think that one did hit me the most, especially with seeing just the progression of how the story changes, and especially towards the end of sort of looking forward to, you know, how everything is so different and certain characters are gone, but there's also this like new generation and this new world where, you know, no spoilers for Fanimated episode How to Train Your Dragon 3, but a lot is different at the end of the third movie. And just seeing the characters kind of move forward, like, we don't know what's going to happen from here, but, you know, but here we go, I guess. That really, there was something really, really powerful about that, I think.
Absolutely. All right, so I've talked a lot about things that I had an issue with this film, but let's talk about one of my favorite parts of this movie and why I love the whole series, really, and what they do so well and what captured my attention in the first film. It's that these films bring real consequences to the story. So in this film...
Yeah, I think I know where you're going with this.
In this film, the big consequence is Stoic dies.
Yeah. Here it is. Let's talk about it. It's great.
Talk about
it's fun. I enjoy it. I'm glad.
Well, first off, the fact that they have Toothless be the one to kill him, just like, wow. Just,
that was brutal.
Twist the knife.
That was... Whew. Yep.
Yeah, that's all we can say about that. But man, this movie, it makes me so sad because like Stoic is so proud of his son and so excited for teaching him and like so excited to, you know, bestow upon him all of his chiefly wisdom. And he's like, isn't able to do any of it. And like, you know, but he's still just like, he just cares so much for his son and he sacrifices himself. And I can think of no better way for his end because like that's truly where his heart lies, like regardless of how he portrayed himself in the first film, like he just cares for his son so deeply. And it just breaks my heart.
The that scene in particular really got me because like I before I watched it today, I didn't remember like the exact minutia of each scene. So like, I remembered that he was gonna die. I didn't remember exactly how. I didn't immediately put it together that it was gonna be because of Toothless. So when that scene came up, I was just like, oh shoot, that's how this goes down. That's how this part plays out. And after the big fireball thing, when the smoke clears, so to speak, there isn't a moment where Stoic is like, come closer, I need to tell you something. And he's just like, just hold on. There's nothing like that. He's just gone. And that was such like a punch to the gut, because I don't know a lot of, movies that are inclusive for younger audiences that do that, where it's just so sudden. And like, no, you're not getting a last conversation. You're not getting any dramatic speech. He's gone. Like, that's it. And then the next scene is the funeral. And like, it is so brutal. I knew it was coming and I was still not ready for it, Like, that was really heartbreaking. The funeral in particular being the... I don't know much about, Viking mythology, so I think the traditional way of, floating the body out to sea on a boat and then firing the burning arrows, from as far as I know, that's accurate. But even if it isn't, it was just haunting to look at while that music is playing, and like Hiccup is the one to take the first shot, and oh my goodness, there's like no actual words spoken for that whole sequence. And it's just awful. Like, it was such a... Ugh. I don't know, man.
The funeral scene is one of my favorite scenes of all the movies. It's so well done, and it's such a turning point for Hiccup in this epic of Hiccup growing up. That is such a big moment for him, because it just changes everything. Like, he has to... step up. Like, he has to now. There's no choice in the matter. And yep. He's been seeking Stoic's approval for so long, and this just constant presence is no longer with him, and it's just so sad. This film definitely has a lot of correlations to The Lion King in my eyes.
Ooh, okay.
And even when Stoic has just fallen and Hiccup is like turning the body over, like that struggle that he has, and it immediately reads Simba, in my opinion. Like, that's what always connects in my brain, is I just think of a Simba and Mufasa. And
I think I get that.
And and just like in The Lion King, he has to step up and take on his responsibility even if he's not ready for it. So I just wanted to plug that in, because that's what I always think of when I watch this movie, is I think of The Lion King.
Yeah. The one thing I wrote down from that scene, I wanted to get it word for word, because it really got me more emotional than anything else in the movie, is Hiccup is speaking after the little makeshift funeral, and one of the things he says is, I think it's part of him realizing that the things he needs to imitate about his father is not the exact specifics of how he did the job of chieftain, but instead like how he treated people and how he was brave and stuff like that. And I think this is him realizing that, because at one point he says, how do you become someone that great, that brave, and that selfless? I guess you can only try. And for some reason, that really got me. Like, that, I wasn't expecting the quote to end that way. And because it was just so normal and so human and so, like, that it's really incredible and inspiring, but it also sounds perfectly like the kind of thing you would hear someone say in a really, really dark moment where there's not a lot of hope in the immediate future. So like, it makes sense that he would say something like that that's very difficult and very it's not like an easy platitude or something, it's really tough, and I just appreciated that a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Also, while the ship is burning, the music in the background is the song that he sang to his wife, and I was not okay with that. I was not okay with that even a little bit. That was very much a cruel trick to play on me personally, and I was upset, and that is just the worst.
Oh, John Powell does it again with this soundtrack. Man, I just can't even with all of it. It's so good, and
he's so good at his job that he made me angry at him.
So good. And I should mention too, for the dancing and the dreaming is absolutely beautiful and so freaking cute.
Yeah.
And it's like they're a happy family.
Yeah.
It's so sweet.
Oh my goodness, that scene is so, man, I don't know.
Which makes Stoic's death even worse because it's like, oh, they have all these hopes and dreams to like be a family again, and then 2 minutes later, Stoic is dead. So
it's so frustrating. I mean, it's perfect, but it's also like emotionally frustrating.
Right,
is what I meant.
Again, this movie makes you feel all of the feels, every feeling you can feel.
I mean, okay, like the scene with Stoic singing the song, and eventually Valka sings in return, and they finish the song, and they're dancing and everything. That scene is amazing. But I also, before I forget, I want to quick bring up the scene shortly before that, where he sees her for the first time.
Yes! Yes. Oh my gosh. I mean, I think that made me cry more than Stoic's death, honestly.
Oh, man. That was... Okay, so if for anyone who doesn't remember it particularly clearly, during this scene, when the characters are finally in the same place, and Stoic turns a corner... Well, actually, before that, the other dude, Gobber. His name is Gobber. So... he peeks around the corner, and then he comes back, and he says to Stoic, yeah, I think you might want to take this one. And he pats him on the shoulder and walks away. So, of course.
And then Stoic is like, okay, is like ready to like take on some beast or something. He like grabs his axe and is like, oh, wait.
Yep, he thinks it's going to be one of the dragon trappers or something. And he goes around the corner, and he sees her. And it's so heartbreaking because he doesn't say anything, and she starts speaking, and it kind of feels a little bit rehearsed, like maybe she has gone over like, oh, if I ever saw him again, this is what I'd say. So it's like partly an apology, partly like, I want to explain why I did what I did, and I know you won't forgive me for that, but I need to tell you anyway. And she's clearly expecting him to argue back. And he doesn't. He's just completely, like, silent, right? And eventually he starts walking towards her because he can't believe that she's really there. And she is getting a little bit teary, and she's like, well, say something, shout at me, get angry at me, something, what's going on? And when he finally does get to her, the only thing he says is, you're as beautiful as the day I lost you. And it's like the most heart-crushing thing in the universe.
Oh, it's so precious.
It's so brutal.
Oh, my goodness. It's so good. It's so good. Ah.
Man. Whew. It's a lot.
All of the feels.
It's a lot. I wonder what it is specifically that, like, makes their emotional scenes so impactful, when I can think of a lot of other movies where, like, there's a couple, and maybe even a couple who's been apart for a super long time, but I don't care nearly as much, I just wonder what it is that puts it over the top. And I'm not totally sure. I don't think I have a good answer for that. But it's really interesting to me.
It is, and it's just like, I just always think about, like, man, they thought that she had been eaten by dragons, and
Yep.
It was such a. It makes me rewatch the first one with a different light too, which is just that
okay.
Stoic. I mean, Stoic really, truly, truly loved Valka and loved his son too. But like, it just makes me think like, man, he really wanted to protect Hiccup because like it's already happened to his family once, and like,
right.
When Hiccup, that scene you were talking about earlier with Stoic reprimanding Hiccup and being like, "You're not my son," and leaving him. That was
it. I knew I forgot an important detail, but yeah,
it's like,
shoot, he says that, doesn't he?
He does, and in the light of what you learn about Valka being kidnapped by Cloudjumper, it's like Stoic was thinking that Hiccup was on the sides of the dragons, and the dragons were what killed his mother. What killed Valka. And it just adds this layer of like, oh snap, like it was bad before, but now it's even worse.
Don't tell me these things. Oh no. That's so sad.
I know.
I had not thought of that at all.
Yes.
But you're exactly right. That's probably how he would look at it.
Yeah, because
oh man.
That's why Stoic was so against, dragons. Like, had such a firm, hatred for them and wanted to destroy them so badly, like, and wouldn't budge on it because he'd already seen what they've done.
Somehow I watched this movie and I didn't put that together, even though I just watched this movie.
It's because I've been thinking about How to Train Your Dragon nonstop for 10 years.
Well, you see, there's a very simple reason. Nice. All right.
No, I'm just a super fan, and I think about these characters too much for my own good. But there you go. That's some insight for you. All right, so let's jump into the finale of this film, wrap this up.
Yeah.
Obviously, just like with any Western animated movie, they don't spend too much time grieving over the loss of a loved one, and they move on to the adventure.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
And, of course, they find a way back to Berk on the backs of the baby dragons, which is hilarious.
because they don't listen to anyone.
I love that so much. And I want to say I really love the symbolism in when Drago's alpha comes to Berk, you see him like topple one of the Viking statues that's out in the water. And I mentioned this in our first episode on How to Train Your Dragon, but it's kind of a clear symbolism of those two Viking statues being one
symbolizing
Hiccup and one symbolizing Stoic, because one of them has yes, because one of them has a cracked horn, just like Hiccup in the books does. Like his helmet, one of the horns is like cracked off.
Whoa, okay.
And so that symbolizes Hiccup, and then the other one represents Stoic. And when the alpha is coming to Berk, he topples Stoic's statue to represent that Stoic is dead.
Wow, I did not know about that. Holy crap.
I love it. I love it. Love it. Anyway, so that's a little tidbit for you.
Oh, yeah. There's a moment in the big fight at the end where Hiccup and Toothless do a little bit of trickery. They split up, so Drago doesn't see Hiccup coming, and he's able to like fly in from the opposite side, spread that weird gas stuff, set it on fire, and knock Drago off of his dragon with an explosion. Like, it is so ridiculous, but it's so cool, and it's just so much fun to watch. That whole action scene is wild.
Absolutely. It's so fun watching Toothless and Hiccup work so well together, like in any of the movies. Like, it's just so satisfying. And just like, again, you get another like friendship piece of just like Hiccup is able to like, get through the hypnosis and like get to Toothless and talk to him and like wake him up out of this craziness. And
yeah, and I was wondering why that didn't seem cheap and why that didn't seem too easy. And then I suddenly realized, like, oh, it's because we've already had the horrible, awful consequence, you know? Like, if he had been, like, if Toothless had gotten, like, mind controlled and then immediately they snapped him out of it, no big deal, that would be one thing.
Right.
But, like, because Stoic is dead, because there's real, tangible, lasting effects, it feels like when Hiccup is able to snap him out of it again and bring him back to the good side, for lack of a better word, like, it doesn't feel like, oh, that didn't mean anything, that was easy, because Stoic is dead, like, and like, he's dead, and we need Toothless back, like, we need him back as soon as possible, so that really felt earned, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. Absolutely, yes. It is a well-earned, and you're rooting for them. They've already gotten to the bottom. Everything is awful. Like, they have reached the pit, and you're ready for something to bring them out of that pit, and so you're rooting for this to happen, and then when it does, the audience is like, yes, this is great. This is what I want.
Absolutely.
And it's, yeah. And then I'm just a sucker for, like, when people think a character is dead, but they're not. And, like, there's that split moment, you know, like, where Hiccup and Toothless are, like, you know, shot with an ice blast. And then everyone's like, no, you know, and Falca runs up and is trying to, like, get to them. And it's like, just kidding. Yeah. Hiccup and Toothless are fine. Toothless, like, explodes the ice because Toothless is awesome. And again, just like in the first one, Toothless is protecting Hiccup and becomes the alpha just to protect Hiccup, and I love it.
That was I did not know they were going to do that. Like, that never occurred to me. I didn't see it coming at all, and it was awesome. Like, it made me think of, like, people talking about, like, the most recent Godzilla movie and, like, oh, everyone bows to the king, and I was like, yeah, but this movie did that first. This movie is so, like, that's such a cool idea. Yeah. Especially because the person he's facing down, the other alpha that he's challenging, is, like, the size of an island.
Yes.
And he's just this little dude. Mm-hmm. He's, like, a couple feet off the ground, and he's just screaming at him like, no, I'm the king. And what's especially great about that is because the other alpha is so huge and slow that he literally can't do anything while Toothless shoots him with fireballs over and over. It's so funny to watch. But at the same time, you're just like, yes, this is what I want to happen. This is fantastic.
Absolutely. And another cool symbolism piece is that at one point, one of the blasts or something knocks Drago's fake arm off, and then they also blast off the one of the talons of the big tusks of the alpha. Yeah. And so it's kind of like the similar thing. They both, like, lose a part of themselves.
Yeah, I noticed both of those things happening, but I hadn't really thought about them together, I don't think. That's interesting.
Yeah. And so they both have, you know, been defeated in a way. What I do think is interesting and kind of weird is that they don't really have very firm, like, ending for Drago. Like the way it happens is just like the alpha goes back into the sea and I'm assuming is fine. And Hiccup, like, looks over the edge, and you kind of see him looking at the water for a little bit, and then they go back to, yay, everything's great. But, like, you know, when I first saw that, I was like, oh, is he going to come back for the third one? But he never does.
Yeah. I lost track of where he was. I did not understand where in space he ended up.
He was on the Alpha.
He was on top of him?
Yeah, he was still, like, he was hiding behind, like, some of the, like, scales and stuff of the Alpha when all the blasts were happening. And so I would assume he also went into the water when the alpha went into the water. And so, like, for all we know, Drago and his alpha are living their best lives somewhere, like, hanging out on a beach. Because we never get clarity.
That is absolutely true. I'm deciding it right now. That is true. In the How to Train Your Dragon universe, they're just chilling somewhere.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
So, I always thought that was a little weird, especially when the third one came out and Drago was nowhere to be found. Again, I'm not complaining because I don't think Drago is a very interesting villain, and so good riddance, but I was still a little bit like, they didn't, like, make that very clear.
Yeah, it was sort of murky. I definitely also thought that he was gonna. Well, I didn't think he was gonna come back in the third movie. I thought he was gonna come back later in that scene, and it was like, oh, you thought you got him, but he's back, and then that didn't happen. I was just like, oh, well, good, okay, cool.
Good. Well, one more thing about the ending of this movie. I absolutely freaking love when the elder, like, you know, makes Hiccup the chief and he stands up and everyone's cheering and he's a little, like, sad and he's, like, a little unsure and he, like, kind of fakes a smile and then it turns into a real smile and it's like, aw, Hiccup. It's just so cute.
That was perfect.
It was so great. Again, the acting in this movie, like, the animators did such a good job acting out these like little subtle things, and it kind of carries into the third one too. Like, he's still, like, unsure about things a lot, and you know, he's, like, stepping into this role that he's unsure about, and you can just see that in his face, but you're still rooting for him and you're excited for him.
That scene, for those reasons, but also because they pan over to the other part of the island and you see they're already working on a statue of Stoic. That got me. Yep.
That was good.
Yep.
Right in the feels.
This is just kind of a funny thing, but there's a whole kind of side plot joke through the whole movie about the girl whose name escapes me, Roughnut, maybe?
Roughnut, yeah.
Two of the other guys are basically fighting over her and trying to impress her, like, the whole movie, which is kind of funny. It's also a little uncomfortable because she's clearly not enthused about it.
No.
But there's a really funny payoff at the very end when both of them are, like, after the battle's over and everything, and both of them are running towards her, and they're like, oh, thank goodness, my princess, you're safe. And she's like, okay, fine. And she opens up her arms, and they both run right past her to their dragons, and they're just like, oh, thank goodness you're okay. I'm so glad to see you.
That's so good.
And I was like, okay, that made this whole thing worth it. That was good.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Hilarious. I love that too. It's so great. And Roughnut becomes even better in the third one. She's great. She's great.
I do remember her being. She somehow ends up captured. She must, like, go off on her own at one point.
She does. Well, she
and take take some of the plot into her own hands. Yeah, for
sure. Although in the TV series, my favorite of the gang that isn't, like, you know, Astrid and Hiccup, is Tough Nut. He's absolutely hilarious in the TV show. Like, I can't even explain how phenomenal he is. And he has a pet chicken, and the chicken and him.
No. Hold up. Please repeat.
In the TV show, Tough Nut has a pet chicken.
So just to be clear, in a society where dragons are available, he's like, nah, I'm going to go with the chicken.
Yes.
That's amazing. I'm so glad.
And he and Chicken go on many fabulous adventures. So
good.
There's another plug for the show. Go watch it. So the gang is so great, and they're all so fun.
Yeah.
And I truly wish you all would watch the series. Like, if you know, I don't want to, like, force it upon you, because I know it's not, like, the best, you know, most well-made show out there, but it's just so fun to see these characters interact more, and they just get so much more screen time, and they make so many good jokes about like Hiccup and his peg leg, and there are so many like dragon nerd jokes. It's so good. Oh yeah, it's hilarious. It's brilliant.
Oh, awesome. Okay.
Just, you know, because it's a TV show and it's it like isn't really canon, they can kind of do what they want, and so they took that to their advantage, the writers did, and they did some fun things, and yeah, I would recommend it just as something fun to watch.
Oh man, that sounds really fun, honestly.
Really quick, just a few like little tidbit things about production and all those fun, awesome stuff. Obviously, Chris Sanders did not work on the rest of the series, although he did help direct the first one. He went off to make The Croods, which is another awesome, fun DreamWorks movie. Highly recommend. And Dean DuBois only took the job if DreamWorks would allow him to do a full trilogy. So they said yes, and the rest is history. So Dean did write this second one with a trilogy in mind. And that's pretty evident because they do mention, Hiccup, Toothless is the last of his kind, maybe, and blah, blah, blah. So they do stuff that like leads into the final film. So a big influence for Dean DuBois were the Star Wars films, and you can definitely see that, especially in this one, because I look at Cloud Jumper and I just think of an X-Wing, but like, just like he was very influenced by the Star Wars films, and just like a lot of filmmakers are, and you can definitely see that in these, and it just feels like a big epic, except instead of in space, you're in Viking land. I really love the music. Again, we kind of mentioned it, but John Powell again wrote the score for this. Obviously, Jonesy comes back and does the additional music, and this time, instead of just having Jonesy have like the end credit song, John Powell actually worked with Jonesy to like make that song that is at the beginning where they're flying together, which is cool. I'm also going to take this quick moment to talk about Alexander Rybak, who, man, I have to remember what country he's from, because Alexander Rybak is a musician from Norway, and he is the Norwegian like voice actor for Hiccup.
Oh, dope. Okay.
But he's also a musician, so he's written several songs as basically like fan artist songs about about Hiccup and Toothless, and they're both really great, and you should listen to his stuff. I will say that his lyrics aren't always the best, but he's just a really phenomenal violinist and like writes some really awesome music. So I just want to throw that out there because it's really fun to listen to.
Oh man, that's super cool.
Yeah, and so one of his songs, like for the Norwegian release, like they did put it in the end credits, and so I thought that was cool, and I was kind of like bummed that wasn't in like our end credits, but that's okay.
Hey, speaking of the end credits, that's actually the last thing I wanted to talk about in my notes here.
Oh, great.
There's not a ton to say, but you guys, the artwork during the credits is so cool. That's pretty much it. That's pretty much, like, I was stunned just like sitting there looking at these different, I don't know if they were concept art, if they were made before the film. I have no idea. I guess I could have looked into that before we started recording, but they're really, really amazing, and they work so well with the song and just seeing all the different places they've been to. One of the pictures is just the ocean, and there's like a tiny, tiny dragon in the corner, but the 99% of the picture is this giant shining ocean, and I look at that and I think, how can a person even design that, you know? There's something so very simple about it. And a lot of the pictures are like that. If they're not like a specific moment from the movie, or if they're a specific location from the movie, just getting to see those still images, there's something really special about that. And of course, that song is playing again, that sort of theme song, I guess.
Where no one goes.
Yeah. I don't think I can adequately explain the end credits art work because they're so cool. And if you get a chance to go look at them again, you definitely should.
I was just going to say, it is concept art, yes, and they're absolutely beautiful. And if you want to like be able to stare at them for hours and hours, just buy the art book, the How to Train Your Dragon 2 art book, and then you can stare at them all in the comfort of your own home.
I actually didn't.
It's beautiful.
I don't think I knew there was an art book. There's an art book?
Jamie, there's an art book for every movie.
There's an art book for every movie, you say?
I do say. Especially animated films, there's an art book for them.
Okay. This changes things. Okay.
Yeah.
Might need to go make some purchases. Okay.
Definitely. Check them out.
Sort of related to that, just the designs of the different locations in this movie are astonishing.
Agreed.
There's a scene in particular where they fly through like a ruined forest where everything's just destroyed.
Yes.
And they're only there for like a minute. But they put so much effort into making this look absolutely haunting. And then they're just gone. Like, it's not even part of the story. They just move on. But, like, they didn't need to put that much work into it, and they did anyway. And that spoke so much. Like, I just loved that design. Everything with the ice is incredible. There's all these different locations that have been basically attacked by ice suddenly appearing from what this dragon can do.
Yes.
Like ice breath or something. So these places just get these weird, unnatural, impossible ice formations, and it looks so cool. And really, a lot of the settings in the movie look like that. They have that detail and that amount of creativity.
Yes, and again, this film came out a year after Frozen, but still, like, that's pretty close. And I will say again, DreamWorks has better ice. I said it in the Frozen episode. I'm going to say it here. DreamWorks makes better ice animation than Disney. Deal with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely. Some of the landscapes and shots are just so like wow. The animation still holds up, by the way. Like, it's been 6 years, but
oh, absolutely, yeah. It looks fantastic.
Especially the one where you see Eric's ship like coming out, and there's like a huge like ice cliff and the water, and I was like, that looks real. Did they film that somewhere? Like that, it's amazing. It's amazing. So yeah, the animation is super great and definitely still holds up and is so detailed. Again, DreamWorks likes to really, really focus on new technologies, and this film was no different. They kind of implemented a lot of different things. They used a new like lighting system and did some really cool stuff with adding elements to like the fat and muscle, like how they move like on the body, which you can really tell in a lot of scenes. But like the biggest thing and the super cool, awesome, like wow, this film, like how is they used a new like processing software, and what they were able to do was the way I've heard this explained with 3D animation from animators is like they, you have to input your XYZ, locations for this 3D object, and then they would, when you're rendering it to like go through and it's like finishing up the finalizations of things, they would like get up, go get a coffee, because rendering would take it hours sometimes.
Right.
To like for the computer to like get it all that information in, right? And like get it set up. Well, this was DreamWorks' first film where they had like an instant, like almost like real time rendering while they were animating.
Oh,
so
shoot.
Basically, like you can see videos of it, and it's so cool. And like, because they could just like go in and like if they're moving, they need to move the mouth around, like it'll render and move right there, right? Just like as they're moving it.
Jeez, I didn't know that was possible.
Yeah, it's crazy. So it basically like cut that time down a lot, and like it's just really cool to see, and like obviously like we've even mentioned all of these awesome little nuanced acting things that the animators did, and I think they were really able to utilize these new systems in place to do and achieve all of those awesome things.
I don't know a ton about the animation process, but rendering is definitely something I've heard about, and the, abhorrently long times it takes. So that is wildly new to me. I did not know that technology was a thing anywhere, let alone 6 years ago. That's really cool.
Yeah, it's so cool. And yeah, it had been 5 years since the first film came out, and like the whole studio kind of had an overhaul with like some technology things. And so this was just kind of like their first really big movie to come out that was implementing all of these new technologies. And so I think that's just really cool and really fun. And yeah, go DreamWorks.
Wow.
Obviously, I'm a huge DreamWorks fan.
Oh, yeah.
Just leaving that. And then, of course, I just wanted to mention this. I just find this really interesting, too. It's just that even though How to Train Your Dragon 2 didn't do as well in the domestic box offices as its predecessor, the international box office was like way better.
Oh, okay.
This film was really internationally successful, and I just think that's really cool. And there's a lot of people around the world that love the How to Train Your Dragon movies, and I think that's really fun.
Yeah. I think it's sometimes tempting to think of it as just an American thing, but that is kind of fun to realize that it has such a bigger impact than maybe even we know about,
Exactly.
Cool.
All right. This is the point in the podcast where I ask you, Jamie, what have you been watching?
Man, this time I actually have too many things to try to figure out what I should talk about. Yeah. No, it's been a while. I think I've already talked about My Hero Academia on this podcast, so I'll probably leave that one aside, even though I am still watching it and I'm keeping up. Finally, I'm caught up and I'm having the time of my life.
Nice.
I watched, a lot of anime now that I think about it. One of my buddies finally got me to watch one of the old, well, I say old, but it's only like the 90s, one of the classics of anime, which is Neon Genesis Evangelion. That was a trip.
Yes.
That was...
Oh my gosh.
That was like that was something else. I am still trying to process what any of that was about and what I feel about it, because that was something.
Yes.
Let's see. I think the one I really want to talk about, though, I finished one recently. It's a shorter anime. It's brand new. I think it just came out in like December. It's called Given. And here's the thing about Given. It's a sappy love story, and usually that's not really my jam, but this one was amazing, and I love it a lot, and I hope if you like any stories about a band trying to like put together a show and, get out there and make a name for themselves, or two people who... Oh, I should have said this right away. The two characters are both guys. And I don't know of a ton of anime out there that's like willing to put into a fully produced, fully mainstream storyline to a storyline with two guys. Like, that's, as far as I know, that's not super common. I could be totally off base there. But that was the first thing that drew me to it, because I thought that was super interesting. And then the story itself ended up being awesome. And like... I got to be in a band for a really short time, so a lot of that sounded familiar, and that was super fun. And I still love doing a lot of music-related things, and the music elements of the show are fantastic, and like taking a closer look at these characters, even in the parts that have nothing to do with romance, they're still super interesting, and they're still super fun. And... when I was trying to describe the show to somebody I wanted them to watch it, I couldn't think of how to recommend it, so I just blurted out, "There's a really cute dog." So that's what I'll tell you guys too. There's a really cute dog, so you should go watch the show.
Yes. It sounds like there's a lot of elements that you really relate to.
Yeah.
So that's super cool. And I haven't heard of this one. So I am definitely going to give it a watch and try it out.
Okay. Oh, that's awesome.
That sounds awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't watch a ton of... I mean, I don't know. I feel like I'm all over the place with anime, but I think I usually stick to, like, shonen battle stuff anyway.
Yes.
But
100%.
You know, we all need a we all need a little romance stories. Have you, side note, I'm going to ask you if you've seen two things.
Right.
One, have you seen Yuri on Ice? Because that's another really phenomenal gay couple that owns my heart. So.
Yes. There hasn't been a second season though yet, has there?
No.
Okay, then yes. Okay. I was
So
about,
you've seen all that.
I was gonna say yes, and then I was like, wait a minute, is there more that I haven't seen yet? But no, yes.
Okay. Secondly, and this is just like for me personally, because I'm trying to, I'd really love to do an episode on this sometime. And
okay.
I haven't really been able to find someone who's watched this. I feel like maybe you've talked to me about this before. You've watched Attack on Titan, right?
Yeah, sort of.
It's not your jam.
Well,
it's okay if it's not.
It's partially that, but it's also partially that I watched the first season, but that was like freshman year of college, so I'd probably have to watch it again to remember what's going on.
Yeah, it was years between the first and second season.
Yeah, and I never got around to watching more, and it's just like, I hear people talking about it, and it's one of those things where I'm like, oh man, that would be fun, but it would be so much to commit to at this point, and like, I don't know, I'm just not, I'm not there, I don't think.
Okay, that's fair. I'll never push it on anybody, especially because Attack on Titan is so gruesome.
Right. There's a lot of pretty dark elements.
It's pretty dark, but I will say it's one of my favorite anime of all time, and I want to do an episode on it sometime.
Like, the story was fascinating at the start, and I've heard it only gets better, so I can totally get that.
Oh, for sure. Well, I went and saw Onward in theater, so I'll mention that here.
Okay.
It was so fun and so imaginative, just like creative, just like Pixar always is. Emotionally wrenching as Pixar always is.
Excellent.
And it definitely made some choices and did some things that I was not expecting. Okay. And that was surprising and fun. It definitely wasn't all I expected. And
interesting. Okay.
I don't know. I don't know how to feel about it because just like why I love How to Train Your Dragon so much, I really love father-son relationships. Mm-hmm. So going into the film, I'm like, great, these brothers are trying to bring their dad back.
Right.
Father-son relationships, right up my alley. I love it. And then it was like, it's like not really focused on the dad so much.
Okay, interesting.
And I was like, yeah, actually, but this is good. It just wasn't what I was expecting. And maybe that's me. That's maybe I'm saying too much, but I don't think I'm spoiling things. I mean, he's you've seen the trailers. He's legs. The dad is legs. Like how involved can he be? You know?
Yeah.
But definitely really fun. So definitely recommend it for sure.
Cool.
I've also been rewatching all of My Hero Academia because I am prepping for an episode on that in the future. And it's really interesting going back and rewatching and just realizing things and connecting things. Because I hadn't gone back to rewatch any of the episodes since I started watching it over a year ago. So it's just kind of fun to go back and see everything with a fresh lens. So that's kind of all I've been watching.
Yeah. I don't think I have anything else in particular. Although again, I really do mean it that as soon as we're done, I'll probably think of something else.
That's okay. You can save it for next time. And
Perfect.
Next time, it won't be 3 months, 4 months since we record. I don't know. It's been a long time since you've been on the podcast.
No, I hear you.
All right. Well, thanks so much for joining me today, Jamie. Yeah. This was awesome.
Yeah, no, it was really fun. And I mean, like I said, I haven't seen this movie in a while, so getting the excuse to watch it again and talk about it was really exciting, honestly.
Good. I'm glad. Well, we'll definitely have to have you on the podcast again shortly. In the meantime, keep making that awesome Knight's Quest podcast.
Oh
I love listening to it, and I highly recommend it to anyone else.
Oh, that's so exciting.
Absolutely. It's just a fun story you guys are telling, so I would highly recommend all of my listeners to check it out, too.
Oh, awesome. The one thing that I think it was Lowell pointed it out. When I'm plugging this show, I actually should bring this up more often because sometimes I forget. Knight's Quest definitely uses language that's not suitable for kids, so just want to make sure to get that out there because sometimes I forget to bring it up at all. But with that caveat, definitely, yeah, check it out. Me and Jake and Nathan put a lot of work into it, and it's super fun.
Awesome. So we will talk to you soon, and I will hear you on your podcast soon. And everyone go watch all of the How to Train Your Dragon movies if you need something to do for an inordinate amount of time right now for any reason at all.
Yeah, this is the perfect time to do it if you think about it.
Exactly. All right. Thanks, Jamie. We'll talk to you soon.
Absolutely. Bye, everybody. Thanks for listening.
Thanks so much for listening. Let us know who your favorite dragon is on Facebook and Instagram at Fanimated Podcast. You can also email us at fanimatedpodcast@gmail.com. You can support the podcast and get behind-the-scenes content at patreon.com/fanimated. The art for this podcast is done by myself. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at CandorDraw. That's KANDERDRAW. The music is provided by Purple Planet Music, and a huge thank you to Jamie for joining me today. Again, be sure to check out his podcast, Knight's Quest. Next episode, we will be going plus ultra with one of my favorite shonen anime. But in the meantime, stay tuned and stay animated.
He is so absolutely certain he can resolve this with peace and just like talking it out, and every other character is just like, no, you can't, Drago is a maniac, and he's just like, no, I'll talk to him, it's fine. And the reason that really made me laugh is because I couldn't stop thinking that it felt very similar to like if you took the character as Steven Universe and put him in like a medieval world of dragons and people getting killed all the time and stuff. And I love that so much.
And just turn it into a musical.
Yeah, I love it.